Hello, hello. Thank you everybody for being here today. Today we're lucky enough to get a chat with Jake Morrison, the author of Pallas Lost, which was honestly just a phenomenal sci-fi adventure to get lost in. I felt like while I was reading it, it was in parts Titan AE, in parts D&D. It was nice because it felt like for everything that went on, it was relatable at times. And I think when you create such an intense environment with such likable characters more than anything, it was just a great story to get lost in. Um yeah, definitely suiting if you need something different with everything going on. So hats off to you there. I know Steve has got a phenomenal amount of questions to ask you, so I'm just gonna pass it right off to him real quick.
Okay. So, Jake, the first thing that I thought when I opened this book was that I saw it was a NaNoWriMo book
Hmm.
that had been written during the National Novel Writing Month. For those listeners who don't know what that is, that's like a monthly challenge in November. I think it's every day of the month you try and do a set thing. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about how this book came to be?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
NaNoWriMo
NaNoWriMo
is
is
50,000 words in a month. The intention is to write a brand new novel during that time frame, and I used it a couple of times to try and get a few other novels off the ground, and never really got where I wanted to go with it. And well, I had had this sci-fi story brewing in the back of my mind for years and years and years, and I decided one year to use that to be the story, and I absolutely failed. Did not meet the 50,000. I think I got that first attempt. I think I got maybe 20K in, and that's still a phenomenal amount of words. Especially keeping up with that through an entire month. It's a lot to deal with. Then the next year, I finished the rest of it and kept working on it for almost a decade.
Oh wow! So the work didn't stop at NaNoWriMo. It kept going for a decade. You said after that. So how long ago was the NaNoWriMo? This was like 10 years ago. You did this, and then
I think the 2012 was the NaNoWriMo year I did the first draft of Pallas Lost, basically. And I kind of picked and tweaked at it for a few years after that. Like, it definitely was not like 10 years of solid work.
yeah.
I, cause that would be crazy. But after you finish Nano, the next step is essentially, in my opinion, setting it to the side and walking away for a period of time, and then reading it again, starting to make edits and changes, and kind of going from there.
Yeah, I feel you. Obviously, the section that comes after the writing of the book, I guess. NaNoWriMo is really good for getting like a first draft down,
Mhm.
since it's at such kind of breakneck speed. So NaNoWriMo was the first thing that piqued my interest, and it wasn't that long into the book. I think it was when they're in a bar called the Lusty Dwarf or something like that. I went, oh, I know this guy plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Guilty. I I am a long form GM. I have two groups right now that I play theoretically every week, but with life being the way it is lately, we haven't been able to meet up. But that's the hardest boss in any D&D group, is obviously the scheduling monster. I think
Absolutely, man.
I was just gonna say, I think it's really interesting all the different things that kind of spur inspiration when it comes to novels and writing. Because I know one of the authors you've worked with in the past, Jennings Zabriskie, he wrote Troop of Shadows, and that was, if I remember correctly, that was started by, they essentially gave him a cover and said write a story based on the
Oh,
cover.
fun.
So it's cool to see you have that, you have NaNoWriMo. There's all these different ways to kind of get your foot in the door of writing, and then obviously like you start with 50,000 words and it becomes something else. It evolves, it changes over time. So it's really, really cool to see
Mhm.
just the background of it all. Oh, and I'll be honest, playing Dungeons and Dragons has been a huge boon to my writing. I I write the book essentially as if my characters are the party of players in the story, and so that kind of helps me inform where things go from time to time.
That's an answer to a question that I was about to ask anyway, which is that I really got the sense that you played D&D from this. I'm a long time dungeon master as well. I'm a forever DM. I had a
Yep.
couple of I had like 3, 4 groups going at one time. That became like a full-time job.
Oh, that's a
But
lot.
yeah, too much, almost too much. And too many people. Like the minute you say you're running a game, everyone wants to play Dungeons and Dragons, and you
Hmm.
got to run 3 games. So things like the adventure element of it, it felt almost episodic, like a good session would, where you've got the downtime, taking care of business, setting up for the. It felt like like a number of heists were going
Yeah.
on through the story. But then I liked that it didn't waste time. It just cut to the part of the heist where it goes horribly wrong usually. So tell me a little bit about how your players and the way that you guys play the game informed, the tone and the vibe in the story.
Oh, sure. So the way I DM, I truly believe in collaborative storytelling. It is not, I am not running them through, the lines as it were. I am allowing them to really tell the story as well. And like in my opinion, a good session is when I've talked for maybe 30 minutes and we're 2 hours in and they're just kibitzing off on some, tangent that I could never have foreseen. And I like to allow my characters to have the same kind of freedom. I really try to think of what, Scotty or Elliot or Vasily or anyone else would do in a given moment and then allow my imagination to kind of take a jaunt down the road I probably wouldn't have done if I'd planned things out too hard.
Was there? This is somebody who doesn't play D&D, but I have watched Critical Role and I have seen the show.
Excellent.
Oh, we're going to talk about Critical Role as well.
Yeah,
Don't think
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
catch those references, Jake.
Excellent.
Was there ever an instance where you were kind of writing out one of the scenes and you just rolled a dice to see what happened, if it would go positive or negative? Like, did you leave it that far up to chance?
Um, I did not. I could definitely see that being something I would do in some situations, but when I'm in the flow, as it were, it's just kind of for me, it feels almost like a natural progression of what's happening. So I don't tend to revisit what I'm writing as I'm writing until a little bit later.
To come at it with fresh eyes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done that before in the first rule, which is the most recent book that I released. That's pardon me, a very heavily D&D inspired book. And for some of the fight scenes in it, I just played them out on a battle map and then wrote down what happened and then put a lot of artistic flourish in it because D&D combat's not always the most exciting thing
Yeah.
to read about when you translate it literally. But using it as a kind of structure was working well, especially if you're a little bit remiss to hurt your precious main characters if you don't really want to. Although I don't think you've got too much trouble with that. There's a there's a point that I made a note of. I think it's when they punch it. I think Vasily punches it for the first time and they go to warp, and everyone gets strapped in, and you see Elliot in the background just sliding behind the floor. There was a bunch of moments like that where like it straddled the line between serious and it had some emotional weight to it. Especially with I forget his name. His name starts with an M.
Matthias.
Yeah, with his wife and everything. There was a lot of heavy emotional stuff in it, but more often than not, I found the tone almost more like Firefly, and I'm guessing that was an inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, Firefly and Tiny are both big inspirations for this, and so I'm really happy that that came through.
It was the nod to, oh well, instead of doing jobs like this, we could transport cattle all around the place.
Yep.
And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that Firefly episode as well. The speaking of inspirations, I made a note of this because I thought it was funny, and then I wondered if it was deliberate. Which was the closest thing I could compare it to wasn't really Firefly or Titan AE or anything else. It was the Mummy because of the archaeological implications, the rogue, someone's literally like a scholar, like a librarian stuff. But was that deliberate?
So, Mommy is also a huge influence. I love that movie. It's one of the top movies, and it what's while that's not like a direct influence, I wouldn't say. The structure of the Mummy with the fighter, the scholar, the smuggler, if you will, the kind of hapless lout kind of character. That's just such a great party composition that
Yeah.
it pulls off of so many things.
it might not be that Pallas Lost feels like the Mummy. It might be that the Mummy feels like a D&D game. And
Yeah.
Pallas Lost
Oh
feels
no,
like a D&D game.
absolutely. I could definitely see the Mummy being, retconned as a D&D game where, things go crazy.
Oh yeah, I'm sure someone should. I'm sure I've ran sessions like that before, where I'm like, I can't think of what to do. We're doing the Mummy. We're doing the Mummy again.
Yep.
There was one other inspiration that I wanted to touch on, and it wasn't a direct reference. I just thought, given all your inspiration, this seems like the kind of thing you might be interested in. I'm going to go niche for a little bit here. You a fan of Sid Meier's games at all? Civilization, anything like that?
I have played quite a few Civilization games. Was it Civ 6 is coming out soon, and
Oh yeah,
I've kind of skipped a couple generations of it, but I want to get back into it because those games, the 4X genre is always time consuming and fun.
yeah. I've lost many hours to them. And are you a fan of Alpha Centauri, or have you played it?
Yes, yeah, way
Yes.
back in the day.
Yeah.
Alpha Centauri was wonderful, and I want to see that kind of stuff more in gaming, honestly.
I think it's the best written game I've ever played, and it doesn't even really have a story. I
Yeah.
managed to track down and read the 3 books that were written for it,
Oh yeah.
uh, and they're insane, man. They're really wild. But that kind of roughly follows the tech tree line. So by the end of the book, you've got all the crazy stuff happening.
Oh, fun.
But yeah, it's good, man. But what it was that made me think of Alpha Centauri was little nods towards, because the book seems like it takes place in a kind of utopia. You get
Mm.
space travel. There's all these technologies and everything. We've literally got flying cars, but the government can just vent the air, and if you don't lie in the little silhouette that they've drawn on the ground and stuff.
Yeah.
So more.
It's
So how much of a dystopia is it?
Well, it's kind of, it straddles that line between utopia and dystopia. Like I think all good sci-fi novels have a grain of what's the word I'm looking for? Like a kind of a watchfulness for things going wrong, right? There's always some sort of political commentary at any good sci-fi novel. And in my world, it is a touch on the dystopian side because of the big corporations kind of ruling everything. It's kind of the corporatocracy, government taken to kind of an extreme, but not an unreasonable one, I don't think.
Yeah, I really like that. I thought it was, especially like, even just with Elliot, with how he has to act in the place where he works and lives, and how draconian it all is, how
Mm.
tracked everyone is. Uh, I thought that was a really nice touch, kind of elevated the setting a little bit. And so, oh, I'd made another note as well, which was, so this is just me going through my little list of details that I made note
Oh,
of
sure.
as I read through it. And one of them was that I was so pleasantly surprised by how accurate this little detail was. Elliot, when we first meet him, has been hitting the gym. He's been getting those gains, brother. He's been putting on some muscle. And then it comes time to run like 50 yards, and he's gasping for breath
Yep.
because he's completely neglected cardio.
Absolutely. Yeah, that
Do you
was
have any
absolutely intentional.
you have any experience with that yourself at all?
um, Not recently, but yes, back in the day, I had a period where I was trying to bulk up a little bit more, and then I just completely didn't do any cardio whatsoever because I hate running. I'm bad at it, and I didn't
Same.
do it. And then I also played a lot of ultimate frisbee, which is pretty much nothing but running, and I would be gassed after like 3 seconds on the field.
I think
Incredible,
it's
man.
I think it's those little details that really stand out though, because some of the feedback that I've gotten is just that the characters were so likable. The characters made the story, and not just the personalities themselves, but kind of like going back to the idea of the mummy and just the right combination of characters. Because I think
Mhm.
there's an element of that ragtag crew that we all absolutely love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we saw this in droves, and I think that was what really stood out throughout the whole story, because you have people that are, how do I phrase this, you have people that are much more committed to the cause than others, and you get
Yeah.
to see you get to see the differences play out throughout. But then at the same time you have the the perspective shifts here and there, and it never felt out of place, because I think when you get with the perspective shifts, I personally always end up struggling because I end up reading through one section quickly to get back to the section that I want to read. But
Yeah.
that wasn't the case in this one. I was equally excited for this, equally excited for that, because you created these worlds that were very nice to get lost in. And like I said earlier, they're relatable. You create this environment where you have these oligopolies in charge. And like, yeah, I hope it doesn't get to that extent,
Oh,
but
definitely.
I I I can't say it. Well, that's kind of the way society is trending at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you get into space travel. I'm not going to be able to start a space company. Like there's quite a few barriers to entry there that really stop people from getting involved.
Oh, for sure. And I'm so glad to hear all of that. Like it's good to hear.
It was yeah, the characters were great, man. I think you spoke a little bit earlier about how you came up with the characters, but I wanted to know a little bit more about how you found or how you came to decide upon the balance in the story between soft sci-fi and hard sci-fi.
Oh man, that was so when I first wrote this, I kind of just in the terminology of now they call it pantsing, and it's flying by the seat of your pants. So I am not a planner. I never really have it when it comes to like my writing or my creative endeavors because I learned very early on in D&D and DMing that if I spent hours and hours and hours developing a plot and a plan, it wouldn't work. They're going to do something different. And my writing was the same way. And as I wrote it, I realized like I didn't really have a good grasp on what the difference between hard and soft sci-fi were. And initially, I thought to myself, "Oh, this is hard sci-fi," because I did some of the math to figure out, how big the 15 systems area of space is and how fast you could travel through the warp I was describing. I was like, that's science, and that I did math. That makes it hard sci-fi. And then maybe a year after writing it, reread it, and then like actually sat down and with definitions and realized, it's definitely soft sci-fi. There's a lot of liberties that I take with, what would make it a hard sci-fi novel, and then I had to make that decision if I wanted to kind of tighten it up and make it more kind of gritty and realistic and closer towards hard sci-fi. But I just liked the humor. That's part of who I am, and I decided to stick with it.
Yeah, the tone was one of my favorite things about it. It felt like I said earlier, equal parts kind of light-hearted, but also knew when to get serious, knew when to buckle down. Kind of, it reminded me of Mass Effect was another note that I made, which and I look upon your eyes and I know that you enjoy Mass Effect.
Yeah, I
I know we're
definitely,
brothers in that regard.
yeah, no, I definitely enjoy Mass Effect. Actually, one of our dogs is named Talizora, characters, and it is my wife's favorite game. She has a tattoo of it as well. And our wedding was actually a combination Star Wars and Mass Effect wedding. This
Oh man, you need to tell me what it was that made it Star Wars Mass Effect. What did you do?
Well, so various things like we had uh like if anyone wants to speak up, now's the time kind of situation. We actually had my wife had a mock-up of one of the pistols from a cosplayer friend of ours, and I had a custom lightsaber. We had geeky things all over the wedding, like Funko Pops at each table for different shows that we like Lord of the Rings and
Yeah.
Star Wars and Firefly and everything. And yeah, it was so nerdy.
Are you telling me? So did
That's so cool.
you talking about the Renegade Paragon interrupts? Like
Yeah,
if someone that's fantastic.
yeah,
That's such a cool.
absolutely.
Oh man, I hope no one done the Renegade interrupt or anything though, right?
No, no one did. The only mishap at our wedding was unfortunately we had set up two different methods of recording. One was streaming, and this was several years ago now. I think 8, 9. Time flies. So we didn't have all the bugs ironed out of the streaming, so it actually didn't record audio. And nobody
Oh,
was checking who could talk to us because we both had our phones off. And then the camcorder we had set up was unfortunately closed by accident and didn't record anything. So we have video of our wedding. We just don't have any audio. So I think was it 5 years afterwards we did a like a shoutcast version of it where we just commented on the
oh man, that's
the
a great
video.
idea.
It was a lot of fun.
Like the director's cut, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the director commentary, right?
The director
That's
commentary,
excellent.
exactly.
Oh my god.
That's so cool.
The
I kind of want to shoutcast my own wedding now.
I think it's something you should go back to every 5-10 years. Just like
Yeah.
see how your thoughts have changed over time.
Yeah, that's our plan actually for the 10 year, which is coming up. We want to do another version of it as well. Yeah, that's definitely a plan.
That's cool, man. There was one other thing that I wanted to talk to you about before I put a little spoiler demarcation. And that was just about the various instances where other languages are used and how you went. Tell me a little bit about.
So I'm not averse to cursing, but there is a lot of um, argument in the writer online sphere about whether or not cursing is good or bad, and I fully believe that words are words, and if you kind of hold some to different standards, it ruins things. But I also didn't want to just be outright, and Scotty as a character, I wanted to kind of pull in some of my own history with that. I was actually born in Iceland. My dad was a serviceman, and so I was born at Naval Air Station Keflavik. And I've been back a couple of times, and Iceland is a beautiful, stunningly beautiful country, and just one of the best places I've ever been to. And so, kind of early on in the writing process, I realized like she's from Iceland, and I thought it'd be a lot more fun to curse in a different language because that seemed like a fun character affectation.
Well, that was
That's so cool. I love all the.
No, I was just gonna say, what wasn't
There
it
you
at
go.
the ending? The ending, you have the glossary with the little the good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff.
Sorry, Steve, go on.
See, the first thing that I thought. So you've been to Iceland. Have you seen the fuselage of the American aircraft that's on the black sand beach there?
Yeah.
First thing I thought was, Jake, was your dad the guy that crashed the airplane that they just never found, never admitted?
Not to my knowledge. No, he was pararescue, so he just dove into the waters to rescue people from boats and things like that, which is terrifying because it's very cold.
Yeah, man. Jeez, it's a man. I'd read that book.
Yeah.
I think anything the family puts out, I'll read. They got a good track record so far.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just kind of holding the book and kind of skimming through. There seemed to be, and forgive me because I haven't read this for a minute now.
Yeah, sure.
There seemed to be a kind of, I don't want to say religious element to it, but and Steve, you might have to correct me because I know you've had a skim recently, but like the kind of the academia felt much more religious isn't the right word, but it had that kind of vibe.
Talking about the demons and stuff.
Yeah,
and the way that
it felt
a
lot stricter. And obviously, I went to public school in the
Yeah.
States, so like my religious education, my education wasn't very strict in any capacity. But
Well, so that was partially intentional. I am not a religious person. I am atheist, and that is just what it is. But when it came to the university system, for example, I took my inspiration from like the monasteries in Europe or like the Trappist monasteries and that kind of mendicant mentality. Because part of the dystopia in the Pallas Lost and 15 Systems universe is that even though we're so advanced and we've learned all these things, we have, AI and near AI and spaceships and awesome things. We're still humans, and humans segregate themselves because humans are dumb. And that was part of the problem with the colony ships is they split off, kind of kept to their countries, and it's hard enough incorporating different cultures when we're on one small planet, and when you're on 15 different systems, it's kind of much harder.
oh, it's a great point, and I feel like there were times where I was reading it, what was like, had that not been a factor, even if spoilers, even if they didn't find Palace, like they would have been fine,
Yeah.
like
Well,
Palace.
they ain't found it yet.
Uh,
Which is what I wanted to press Jake on, is where's the sequel? Where are we getting the sequel?
Unfortunately, the sequel is coming. It is written. The first draft is already cycled and I've sent it out to my alpha readers and gotten back their copies. And I'm at the point of rewrites right now where I'm kind of deciding what to add to, like a small spoiler. For example, the chapter in Pallas Lost with the mole was added in after the second draft, I think. And
Yeah.
I really love that chapter, but it just like something was needed at that moment. And that's how that came about. And that's where the sequel is right now. And I'm also debating with myself and my wife on whether or not the title should be Pallas Found or not.
Mm.
Because that was what I went with initially. It was always imagined to be this was a trilogy. Um, but halfway through writing Pallas, well, I'll call Pallas Found for now. Um, the story took a turn I didn't expect and didn't kind of plan on, and fully in that, allowing my characters the rope to hang themselves. Things shifted, and what I had initially thought was going to happen in the second book got pushed into the where the third book would be. Just kind of changed the order of how things were happening. And so now it kind of was like, oh, well, maybe a different title would be good, and that's kind of where I'm at in the process with the sequel. But it
I
is
so want to
coming.
ask what the other title might be, but I don't know if you can tell us.
Yeah, I haven't really nailed it down. I actually have a newsletter I do at the top of every month. And my plan is my anniversary for it, I think, is either October or November. I don't know offhand, but I'm going to do a little poll in that edition of my newsletter where I kind of give six or seven different titles and see what people think.
Well, that's really cool. And I think that that kind of segues really nicely into we have 4.5 minutes left on the
Okay.
timer. And I want to make sure people who liked Pallas Lost, people who like you as an author, what should they read next? How can they get a hold of you? Where's the best way to find all the updates, sign up for your newsletter?
Oh yeah, so jake-morrison.com is my website. Um, it's going to be updated relatively soon with more details about the sequel as they come out. Like I said, as I'm writing it, and I also have a Substack, um, whose name is just absolutely escaping me right now, but I'll send you the
We'll,
details.
we'll we'll put it all in a
Yeah.
YouTube description. I don't worry.
But that Substack is kind of my monthly like update on my journey as a writer and world builder and like how things are going. The sequel to Pallas Lost will be coming soon. Probably not by the end of this year, but most likely early next year. And I've already started work on the third book, so that is going to come relatively quickly as well. But I want people to read and enjoy things, and I want to put things out there they can read and enjoy.
No, and I think that's the best way to go about it. Like I feel like the moment you start rushing these things
Mhm.
to hit your own internal deadlines isn't
Yeah.
really. I think that's when you start getting into this trap. So I think by all means go at your pace and
Oh, because
work for
my
yourself.
my first internal deadline for the sequel coming out was 1 year exactly after Palace Lost came out, which was not happening.
Well, that doesn't even give you too much time to get much feedback
Yeah,
from readers as well.
yeah, because I didn't want a situation where certain other authors who have put out wonderful works but then fail to follow through on finishing them, and I didn't want to be one of those writers. Also, if you sign up for my newsletter, the anniversary edition of it, October or November, whichever one it is, there will be a short story. In the because that's what I did last NaNoWriMo is I didn't really want to write a book. So I wrote several short stories in the 15 system universe, which was always part of my plan. So there will be a short story in the Pallas Lost universe.
That's really cool. Do you have will this be the first short story in the Palace Lost universe?
Yeah, the first one that I've released. I wrote 4 or 5 of them during last November before I ran out of steam, and two of them are a lot of polishing, but one of them I feel really good about, and I think people will enjoy it. It is about Matthias.
That's very
Oh, nice.
because I think
Matthias was one of my favorite characters as well. I'll check that out.
because I think at least for me, like the world building and everything, you've really set yourself up for success there because I can see you have 15 different planets, this and that. There's so much room for all these short stories to take place. It's a nice thing you have going on the side as well.
Yeah, that was definitely part of the plan. Is I've had this sci-fi world, like I said, kicking around in my head for decades now, and I just want to start putting more of it out there.
Huh. you know.
Have you ever? On you go, Ryan.
No. I was just gonna ramble. Go on.
Well, we've only got 90 seconds, but have you ever ran a game in the Pallas universe in the 15 systems?
No, I haven't. Yes, I've planned it, but I also have a fantasy novel I've been kicking around, and that world I have run games in.
Oh, yes.
That's very cool. Because I was gonna say if you want to.
Absolutely, that would be fun.
But yeah, well, I mean, again, just thank you so much. Like the whole process has been wonderful. I know life has been life the past few months. But more than anything, we really appreciate the time you taking the effort to be here, writing such a wonderful story and taking a chance
Thank
and
you.
being a part of it all. Um, we'll get this up soon and we'll always be in touch. But yeah, just thank you again. And if you've managed to make it half an hour, 35 minutes into an interview and you forgot the name of the book, it's Pallas Lost by Jake Morrison.
And thank you guys so much. This has been an absolute bright spot in this entire year. And thank you so much for the interview and your time and for reading my book.
Pleasure, Joe.
That pleasure is ours. Well, take care. Have a lovely rest of the day
You too.
and talk to everyone soon.
Do you know, Jake?